Thanks, Ed. We'll move on. Jeff will be around if you have questions after this. So next up, we have Pete Johnson, ecologist for the Chugach National Forest, talking about reflection on protection. I like the little run, the reflection on protection. Chugach National Forest approach to keeping non-native plants out of Prince William Sound. Jeff.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me back here again this year. It's my second year. I'd heard that the theme this year was reflections in the sound, so yeah, it took me a second there, but I think reflections on protections. My name is Pete Johnson. As Paul said, I'm the ecologist from U.S. Forest Service in the Prince William Sound Zone. I work on projects that extend from here throughout the Sound down through the Copper River Delta. So we've got a lot of area to cover. And a lot of what we do involves non-native invasive plants. And I feel like a lot of times when we give these talks, everybody gets kind of a public service announcement of these plants are bad, right? I say these things are terrible and don't plant this and don't do that. But we never really talk about why they're bad or what are we doing to find them, right? Like what are we doing out there? So today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about out in the Prince William Sound to see who's working out there to manage these invasives, what are we looking for, and how are we looking for it, kind of some of the methods that we use to find some of these invasive plants. How do we happen upon them and who's doing it? And then I'm going to talk about some of the mapping that we use to be able to hold this data and also where we can all see it. Because a lot of times too, this is all information that's happening out there. This is government agencies or crews are working, but we never really see the end result. So I want to make sure to convey to everyone where we can see some of this mapping for ourselves. And I also want to talk about what we're doing when we do find invasives out in the Sound, because ultimately we're trying to maintain this wonderful living laboratory that we have out in the Sound, this pristine, functional ecosystem that we love so much. So as I said, I wouldn't give a PSA. Here's my PSA. This is going to be kind of what are some of the things that happens with invasives out in the, not only in the Sound, but just in general, right? I mean, these are all, as I was speaking with Ann earlier, it says, what makes a plant invasive, right? It's like, so this is a plant that's introduced, that's not native to this area, that is pushing out something that's native, right? All our native plants. So that's what we're ultimately thinking about. It's not successional. It's the fact that these plants are not from here, and they're utilizing resources that our native plants don't have the ability to. A lot of times it could be anything from root structure to just being able to utilize those nutrients in a more effective way that pushes out our native plants. So let's start with the who. Well, I'm supposed to be out there because I guess I'm getting paid to be out there, so I better be out there. Forest Service ecology crews, and we're supported by the wilderness crews, fisheries, aquatics. I even thought I didn't put BBVC on there because half the time I've got them out there helping doing surveys with me also. We're all out there and we're checking all these various areas, which I'll get to in a second. Additionally, we have partners. That's the only way we can get our work done is with the help of partners, stewardship foundations, the Alaska Center for Conservation Science, which is a part of the UAA system, and they're out there helping us get this done, doing surveys and invasive work. The various soil and water conservation districts are also partner agencies that are out there doing this work, doing the surveys, documenting everything they're finding so that we can make informed land management decisions on the forest level. So let's see here. Where and how are we looking, right? I mean, I think we talked about the Sound, and it's like something like the size of, it's bigger than the state of New Hampshire. I think it was something I've heard before. So where are we going to find this? If you look on here, all these dots are representing areas that have been surveyed and data is collected. And this is a map that is accessible by anybody, and that's through the UAA. This is all our information gets fed through them through the Alaska Exotic Species ACEPIC, Alaska Exotic Plant Inventory Clearinghouse. There it is. And I'll make sure to throw a link up there for that at the end. And all these different locations that we have here are areas that we have taken data from. Green areas, we're looking good, right? And we start seeing some of the white areas. Those are areas of infestations that have been located. And if you guys start to notice, I don't suppose this thing has a pointer, does it? I don't know if you see in there. Oh, well, either way. If you guys notice, we start seeing white lines. They're all close together and they're zigzagging. Anyone take a wild guess what those are, kind of on the fringes of the sound? Those are roads, right? Those are the arteries that are dragging those invasives all over the place. So if the roads are dragging all over the place, who else was dragging them? Us, right? So whenever we go in there. So a lot of those white dots, for people that are out in the sound, probably recognize those might be some rec areas. Hopefully it's not your favorite fishing spot, because then I know who did it. But what all those places are going to be is those rec areas. So those are some of the areas that we focus on. We do a lot of our surveys focusing on some of the rec areas. And we're doing those so that we can try to get ahead of what it might be an invasive species population. Some are easy to get to, obviously. It might be just a walk on the beach, and others not so much. Because a lot of all these places, as I said, we focus on some of the rec areas. Some of the rec areas can be accessed by float plane, and I'm not a pilot. So I wind up having to do a lot of walking and bushwhacking. But one thing I always do is I only go out on sunny days, so that's very beneficial. I highly recommend it. It's much easier. I'm not sure you guys are doing a lot of stuff in the rain. I don't know why. One of the things that we want to focus on is what are we looking for, right? I mean, weeds. Okay. Well, the Forest Service, as part of our forest plan, we have developed 5 focal species. These are the most unwanted list, right? And we're going to be looking at, we have, starting at the top left, orange hawkweed, reed canary grass, white sweet clover, bird vetch, and Alaska's only aquatic invasive Alodia. Why do we choose these? Because they have an invasive ranking of 70 or higher. That invasive ranking is based off of the information, again, with ACEPIC. This is a collaboration of agencies and organizations, and we have looked at all the different plant species and determined their invasive ranking. So when you go on that, to find that map, you can also find how invasive are these plants. So we've actually been able to establish which ones are the worst ones. And since we want to focus on the worst ones, these are the ones that we're ultimately looking for. If we find other ones, we will also contain or control that one. And I say that's part of our management approach too to a lot of this, is we make decisions. Do we want to contain it? Do we want to control it? Or are we going to eradicate it? Right? So those are kind of 3 things that we're thinking about also. And that can have to do with anything with accessibility, how widespread something is, and how likely something is just going to be reintroduced. Right? So this is a multi-pronged approach. So what are we finding out there? So we're saying we saw some dots, and we saw there's focal species which are really terrible. We don't want those out there. But in majority, is we're finding terrestrial plants that are low on the invasive scale. That's a good thing, right? And that's actually one of the reasons why I took this job, is because it didn't seem like it'd be too hard. So, but what's hard about that is that you have to maintain that. There are a couple areas within the sound and the outer areas that do have some of those ones that are higher up on that ranking list. And so we are working to manage those. But predominantly, like I said, they are lower on the invasive scale and are able to either be contained or controlled or eradicated. So in addition to one of the things that we're finding out there, there are some areas that are kind of somewhat new to me. This is out on Kayak Island, if you're familiar with that, kind of down near the mouth, or past the mouth of the Copper River Delta. This is a project that we're working on with partners for the Copper River Watershed Project. And we're managing the population of yellow iris. You guys see that there? And that is one that we don't have too much in the sound. It's primarily just on Kayak Island, but it's been bouncing around through southeast Alaska. So with all this that we have is that everything's looking pretty good. We're seeing some of these species that have been trying to creep up, and this is one of them. And what's interesting about yellow flag iris is that not only is it saline tolerant, the seed pods are also saline tolerant, and they float. So they can actually, in southeast, they've been bouncing from island to island. And this is a program that we're working on to make sure we eradicate the only known populations up here in the Chugach. And yes, there's also some thistle there that we're also working on, so it's a twofer. So here's kind of an example. Boy, I don't know if you can see that or not. There's 3 little spots, yellow flag iris. The one up in Anchorage, I'm pretty sure is someone's garden. And so I can't do too much about that one. But the other 2 are located, you can see just one off of Kayak Island, and we're working to take care of those. But I also wanted to highlight that this map is available to anyone, and the acronym for that is GBIF, and I'll have a later slide. I'll have this, you can take a picture of it or something like that. But that's another one that is available to everyone to be able to see. And GBIF is a collection of all the data from whether it's Forest Service, state, could be just soil and water conservation districts. All this information gets fed into these big databases. And it's a really great place for people to take a look and to see stuff from everywhere. It's not just Fish and Wildlife Service. It's not just DNR, Audubon, whatever. This is a great place. So this is an example of what that map would look like from GBIF. Aquatics and EDRR. So that stands for early detection and rapid response, right? That's how our approach to a lot of aquatics is we're trying to find it earlier because it's cheaper to treat. It's also easier. So what we have here, what we're looking at is actually a bunch of locations for that Alodia, our only aquatic invasive species in Alaska. Now on the Chugach, there's 11,000 water bodies. With that, we were able to whittle it down to 3,000 that have the potential to have Alodia in it. And we have 3 people on the forest that are primarily based with plants. So that's a lot of people on the forest here to look for these plants. But we created the Alodia Vulnerability app. And this is a way to feed information into this app, and we can find our priority water bodies. And so that's what we've done. And I'm still entering data into it, so it's coming. But what we've done is we focused on things. We found float plane traffic, recreation sites, and we've also just done surveys to determine if the water body itself would be suitable to Alodia. Alodia likes to live in shallow water bodies that have primarily muck soil substrate. So real deep rocky lakes, not as much of a worry. Now, there's a couple of outliers in that, but for the majority, that's the case. And so we're able to determine which lakes have our highest priority level. Within those, we can even determine how often they need to be surveyed, because surveying it once doesn't mean that it's not going to be flown in there next week. So we have to do repeat visits to these lakes that we've determined to be vulnerable. And you can see some of these surveys entail hiking into some place that might be a floatplane lake, and then pack rafts, and then we usually use a lot of rake throws. If you're familiar with this, it's just basically a garden rake on the end of a rope, and we throw it in 3 directions, and their presence absence surveys. That's primarily how we're determining if a lake has Alodia in it or not. This is an example of what a lake might look at once I click on it and I say, all right, I need to go survey this. Each one of these locations on here is going to be a spot where we have to stop, get back on shore, and toss a rake in 3 different directions and collect information. This is actually Lake Eak over in Cordova, which we know has Alodia. We know that because it was the first documented case of Alodia in the state back in 1982. So as I mentioned before, I was going to say some areas where we want to access our maps. So the Alaska Exotic Plaques Information Clearinghouse is through UAA. It has a great resource. Look on there. Not only does it have the plant lists, it has the maps where things are located. It explains about some of the plants, and it will give you information on like how invasive it is. Why that really matters is because I want to convey to everyone here that uses these areas in the sound to know what you're getting into before you go to a place, right? Know what invasives might be there before you're going there recreating. If you're going to set up fish camp somewhere out there, you might look and say, well, shoot, they've got a bunch of invasive plants right here. Why don't we go 100 yards down the shoreline and set up over there, right? So it's beneficial to everyone to be able to have access to this. I've talked about GBIF before. It's another one of those databases that takes all this information. The same information that we're collecting with all these surveys gets fed into all this. Usually it's in the fall. Usually in the fall, we're all updating this information. And these crews that I'd mentioned before are doing that. And plain old iNaturalist. I know I wind up scamming through iNaturalist every so often. And just recently, a few days ago, I had found where someone thought they had found some false spirea just here in town, and I don't think so. I think it's goat's beard. But what a great opportunity for you to be able to report it. The beauty part about iNaturalist is it helps identify it. There's so many times when people will say, I think I may have seen this, but I don't want to be wrong, right? People are like, oh, I don't want to be wrong, and cause a big uproar. A lot of these now, they'll help with identification. So that may you want to bring it forward. So those are great opportunities for you to be able to record that data and submit it or bring it to someone's attention. So how are we managing these invasives when we find them, right? So here's a picture of our buddy George. And George has been helping me to get rid of some poppies that are out in the sound somewhere. And they're really nice looking poppies, but unfortunately they're not supposed to be there. And the best way we can have to eradicate those, or a really effective way, is to just hand pull them. And I wish Victor was in here, because I think actually Victor helped me about doing this about 15 years ago, and they're still there. So we're working hard to pull this out, but if you look on the left, you can see George's bag is much bigger than 2025, so it's as simple as going out and hand pulling these. And it's been really effective. And I'm looking forward to doing it. And obviously you can see this was a couple years ago. It was raining, so decided not to do that. So the next year we went when it was really sunny. So that's how you do it. You live and learn. Some other things that we're doing out there is that we're working with a lot of the permittees and guides and groups working out there in their permitting process to make sure that they're having all their gear cleaned, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Never more true than invasives. So one of the things that we do is we ask them to make sure that all their gear is clean. And that's everything from their shoes from their guests' feet when they're going on shores to backpacks. It was interesting. It was about a year ago. I was talking to an outfitter guide, and I'd done a vehicle inspection. I saw them. They were washing all their tents. And I thought, man, these guys are awesome. Because here they are getting rid of all these invasive, any potential seeds or soil or anything on there, and they're hanging up. And I came over and I was talking. I was like, man, I really appreciate it. Like, thanks for doing this. Like, I didn't take you prompting. You did it on your own. And he just kind of looked at me. He says, like, well, I'm just washing the salt off my tents here, you know. And what I heard is that I'm really stoked because in the process now of him getting rid of all these weeds and seeds, it also benefits him because he gets salt off his gear, you know, like priorities. So that's great. Another project we have is we're part of a number of agencies with a program that's ultimately operated through the state of Alaska, certified weed-free mineral material, so weed-free gravel. Any gravel that's used on forest projects is required to attempt to utilize gravel that's been certified not to have any invasive plant parts or propagules. And that involves an inspection twice a year by a certified inspector. It is a fantastic program, and it's one that has been gaining steam over the years, and it just makes it so much easier. And maintaining a weed-free pit is not very difficult, because the beauty part of a gravel pit is you can bury it, you can burn it, and everything just works out fine, right? Easy peasy. So it's a great program. It's one of the things that we're doing out in the Sound. Treatments, like as I mentioned, on Kayak Island, we are doing a chemical herbicide treatment out there, but we're also using, between hand pulling, and we're also using some mechanicals by doing a little weed whacking. As you can see here, I don't know if you noticed, there's that black geotextile tarp. This is a project that we're doing where we're actually using it to shade out some reed canary grass. And that's a way to minimize the amount of herbicides that we have to use. And it's like any type of integrated pest management plan. It's like there's a different tool for every place. And we're trying to use all the tools that we have to manage all these different invasive species and protect this beautiful area that we have. Last thing I always like to do when we're talking about invasive plants is I like to look at all the native plants, right? Because what's the point of, are we out here just killing to kill plants? Like, no, we're out here protecting. And so I just want to highlight a couple of cool primulas. Like this, if you look in the list, the wedge leaf primrose, which is more of an alpine plant, and I just think it's cool looking with its cool little notches in the petals. And then its lower elevation cousin, the Greenland primrose, which is actually interesting because it is on the southern regions down in the lower 48, it's starting to become imperiled, and it's doing great up here in Alaska. So I thought I'd end on that little note of having those cool flowers to look at. And with that, I'll say thank you very much. All right. Any questions?
Any questions? Yeah.
Just a quick one. When does it, I understand invasive, man brings it in by plane, ballasts in a ship or whatever. But what about natural? A bird has it in its gut and drops the seed, you know, islands. If we went by invasive, a new volcanic island, we'd rip everything out saying, oh, it's invading. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. It's interesting because it's like that determination. I think ultimately it comes down to, though, is the impact that it has on the ecology of the other surrounding native plants, right? If it's introduced, right, and if it's from a bird, like I think about like European bird cherry, it's kind of one that we think about a lot, right? But it comes down to the impact that it has on that native ecosystem. If it creates a monoculture, like that, for instance, that the orange hawkweed is actually allelopathic, and it will then, right, exactly. So allelopathic is that actually releases chemicals from the roots so that other native plants will not be able to germinate, and it kills all the other ones, right? So if it's introduced, and a lot of these, you know, these are European ones that we're talking about here, these main ones. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like it's like the impacts that it has on the rest of the ecosystem.
Even if it's a natural occurrence.
You know, yes. You know, it still is negatively impacting that, whether it's introduced naturally or just didn't mean to, right? I mean, there's so many things that were introduced that we thought were going to be lifesavers, but actually went, like, again, the Mayday tree, right? So, okay. But if you have more questions, I bet you could ask me later on. I'd be happy. Or do I have time for any more, Paul? Or? Okay. Sure.
Typical farming, just so the folks online can hear. Are there any typical farming situations? You know how people like to dream about going out and homesteading, you know, in very remote areas that are not helpful? Say like, you know, orchards or typical farming things.
You just mean because of something like escaping or something like that? Well, you know, I guess it's one of those things, if it's happening on private property, I don't have too much say in it. But in general, I would say that with caution, right? It's like with anything else. It sounds like, because I know that we don't generally allow crews that go out and say, like, I know it's come up before where crews will be on weirs and they want to have their own like vegetable or flower garden. And we generally say, no, we don't want to do that because there's a potential that if it's remote also, right? Because that's the other factor. When we're factoring in all these things as to whether or not we're going to contain, control, eradicate, we think about how remote it is, right? That's one of the reasons we might choose to use like an herbicide compared to a mechanical, right? Because you're not going to be coming back to it. So by putting something out in the sound and then maybe walking away from it would make me nervous. But that's kind of comes down to my opinion, because if it's your private property, I can't do too much. But not on the rest of the Chugach, I guess.
Just knowing a couple other species, I've been kind of nervous about eradicating certain invasive species just
Yeah.
for fear of them reproducing.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to handle the purple loosestrife? I have a giant patch of that I've been trying to get rid of and it won't go away.
You have purple loosestrife?
Yeah, it's that one purple flower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No, I don't
isn't
think
that what
you have
that's
purple
called?
loosestrife.
What's
That's gone out of the state. That's been out of the state a couple
Okay.
years.
What's that purple one that you
Is
had
it
up there?
bird vetch? I can't go
It's
back.
really pretty, but it takes over the fireweed.
I'm hoping it's bird vetch. I mean, not hoping, but I mean, probably bird.
Yes, that
bird?
one.
Okay,
That guy.
that's bird vetch.
Okay.
Okay. You can try to pull it. That's what we've done for a lot of it, is just trying to pull it. That's one that we might put more of the management decision to try to control. It's really hard to eradicate, actually, and it winds up just being some like the best treatment for it might be elbow grease on that one.
Can I ask a super quick question online?
Oh, yeah.
What's the best way to eradicate hawkweed? Maybe it's not that quick of a question.
Aminopyralid.
Can you say that again?
I think I'd say the best results that I have had on a long term have been to use responsibly an aminopyralid. There you go.
Thanks.
You brought.